The title is quite ambitious, and certainly within this probably I have approximately 50 odd minutes, I guess. It's quite difficult to do justice because I think today we know every word has to be defined and the framework should be given for us. So there are too many words here, concepts, literature, metamodernism, realism. I think I can only probably touch upon some key elements in what is known as metamodernism. And like I said, hopefully when I share the uh, material, it will make more sense to you. This is what I actually would like to do here. Maybe very briefly, just look at the term philosophy is not really speaking in the actual sense which is used in the school of philosophy. It's a very generic term. So the connection between theory and philosophy. Then jumping to postmodernism before I touch upon modernism, trying to see what comes after postmodernism, and looking at in the chronological order something about modernism followed by postmodernism, then which brings us to a subject or a topic or a term called metamodernism. Of course, this is the main focus of this discussion. So very quickly, there's a lot of data, so it's not possible in this time frame. So we'll see what we can do, at least focus on the most crucial aspects. So the definition or what is metamodernism, some background to it, like who are the people responsible or what are the dates involved. And probably this I thought will make it much more clearer. Some quotes, probably 3 or 4 quotations, then some elements of metamodernism, central preoccupations. I essentially all these are the same. So I try to divide it into different components, but there will be some repetition among all these 4 subcategories. And finally, something on trying to give you some actual texts where we find this metamodernist techniques being used. And perhaps if you still have the energy, some questions. Okay, so I think I've got the PDF. I wanted to share the PowerPoint. So if you just give me a moment, I'll try to. This is the way in which I want to kind of go about the work today. So very quickly, we have these various schools of okay, even these terms are a little bit tricky, criticism theory, critical theory, literary theory. So, okay, schools of approaches, if you like, starting from liberal. This is not a kind of, I tried to make it chronological, but there are obviously overlaps. So we have all these various schools with us, starting properly speaking with formalism or new criticism, then down the line, structuralism, then even postmodern criticism, okay, post-colonial criticism, then post-structuralism, feminism, so on and so forth. And maybe all the texts will end with the critical studies. And somewhere this metamodernism perhaps has not yet, still yet to find its place. So probably later texts you will have metamodernism also included. So essentially, what does this theory, I think there are 2 components, probably 3. So the first part, what they call the philosophical background or the backdrop of these theories, very loosely used. Of course, we can make it also very specifically philosophical if you like, but in a generic sense, we use the term philosophy. So don't get too much worried or even hopeful. Okay, so that is the first element in all these schools. The second one, of course, what this all these isms, what they entail, what are the let's say the features or the components involved, the characteristic aspects or elements. And the third, of course, how it relates to literary studies. So I guess that we probably omit to understand that most of these isms, if not every ism, tries to capture reality. So that's why I've titled it to neo-realism and all that. Unfortunately, we do not have much time to debate this term or phenomenon reality. So I'll just assume all the background information. So I just want us to go to the structure, sign and play, where Derrida tells us that the entire history of metaphysics is the determination of being as present. So he talks about what he terms it as metaphysics of presence. So that is, in other terms, reality. And that reality he defines in many ways, including consciousness and transcendence, God. So ultimately speaking, these isms are supposed to help us to glimpse reality, and by that probably some transcendent reality. So, but he points out that starting from Nietzsche, this critique of metaphysics, a branch of philosophy, included the critique of the concepts of being and truth. So we are looking till Nietzsche, we looked at philosophy trying to capture being, capital B, and truth. But his argument, of course, which today we know as post-structuralist thought, is that you cannot do that for so many reasons, but you can only have play, and he claims that we can have a sign without present truth. So that is what Derrida says. So I don't know if this is a little bit complex. And so there's an absence of center or origin and an absence of transcendental. So we have a attempt to capture reality, but recent thought tells us that because of the nature of language and other reasons, we are unable to do that. In fact, reality is guided by language for one, and second, we have no access to it anyway. So then what does all these isms, what does it try to do? So just think of something substantial, matter, for example, let's say earth, and you have something, let's say vacuum. So now suddenly, right from the classical era, the humanistic era, down the line, up to even modernism, we have people grappling with something solid, solid matter. And suddenly we are told philosophically that you have no access to this solidity, and all you are left is not even air, it's vacuum, nothingness. So how do these theories help us? That's why I think all this confusion, because essentially meaning is removed from the picture. So meaning or presence is removed from our debates or discourses, and we are trying to substitute this central meaning with certain technical devices like parody in postmodernism, irony, or whatever. And that's why I suppose many of us, or at least someone like me who comes from the old school, so to speak, we find it very puzzling, and we don't even find it making any sense. But this is because of the theoretical background. So this is, of course, anti-foundationalism. It's called as anti-foundationalism, and this keyword skepticism. So we are very skeptical. We are not believers. We are skeptics. We are doubters about what? About meaning, about knowledge, about truth, about value, about even self. We are not believing that we have access to all these entities. And imagine a literary work, and then you have a criticism, literary criticism, or even a literary theory trying to interpret that literary work. And probably that is a reason for this enormous complexity of trying to make sense of a lot of contemporary works, probably last 40, 50, 60 years. So this is taken from Dictionary of Literary Terms. It's available. So this so-called theory became very important term in post-structuralist thought. And this is essentially defined as a manner of signification. Theory is a manner of signification, which is supposed to determine meaning and interpretation. Again, we go back to the same thing, no? And so this is a very simple background to the philosophical element of, let's say, very simply put, even if you do not bring in transcendence, being, presence, or all these big words, at least reality. So we do not have access, simply put, to reality. That's the end of the story. Okay, so this is a very simple kind of representation. So you can see these. No, so since I'm talking about metamodernism, I have to situate it both in modernism and postmodernism, because metamodernism is actually today defined as an approach which takes a bit of modernism as well as a bit of postmodernism. It kind of oscillates like a pendulum. That is the exact image given for us. So it oscillates between modernism and postmodernism. So very simply put, the age of the radio is the period of modernism, television, and of course now digital age is metamodernism. Okay, so keep this in mind for the historical perspective. And these are certain conditions for us doing theory. So when we are doing theory, we have to realize, I think this is what I can suggest, subject to some additional data, of course. So any school of theory, we should realize that it's not a single monolithic body of no thought. There are several theoreticians, several practitioners. Almost sometimes you find that they are contradicting each other. This is the first challenge of theory. Even let's take postmodernism or post-structuralism. So you have or post-colonial approach. So you do not have a single person. It's not a one person army, so to speak. So there are diverse points of view, but loosely that is brought under, I suppose, one term, one nomenclature. Otherwise, we'll have multiplicity of writers and approaches, and it'll be chaotic. So even when we talk about metamodernism, there are several slightly different, sometimes quite radical definitions of metamodernism. So it's not a single complete, unified, holistic definition. Not only metamodernism, but any school of thought you can think of. Sorry. So theory is of course a framework. So we know that it's a lens, it's a framework, it's a support. It's a way in which we deal with literary texts. And of course, in research today, the question, probably the standard question that is asked in the oral exam, Viva OC or whatever, is that what is the method that you have used? Is it a feminist method or the eco-critical method or post-colonial method? So we do need a theoretical method for undertaking research in literature or humanities. But the truth is, again, there is no single point-to-point or one-to-one correspondence between the various aspects of the theory that you adopt or you have taken or chosen for your study. So sometimes you find in the introduction, we can talk at length, let's say, about post-colonialism, but I'm not very sure that exactly we can. Some texts probably yield better correspondence or equivalence, but several times we are struggling, even with the field such as feminism. There are many dimensions to feminist thought, and when you pick up a text which is labeled as feminist, you will find that you are not able to show a kind of a no parallel between the theory, and so that's this is the reality. Okay, so and to complicate our discussion a little bit, this is not a method, like a post-structuralist method or a feminist method or something. It's only a condition. So modernism, postmodernism, metamodernism are which is actually the terms that we use earlier days, which was called as human condition, state of human affairs. So like earliest period was humanism, and little later we come across several centuries I skip, and we come to modernism because of the war, World War I. So that creates a difference of thinking in humanity, and their belief and hope and their solidity that they had about their existence was challenged. So they began to ask questions about ultimate meaning and so on. And then of course postmodernism goes a step further and says everything is relative, and there is this is nihilistic, so to speak. It promotes nihilism. And then of course metamodernism, which is a reaction to, very simply put, reaction to the extremities of postmodernism, because you cannot forever be cynical, forever be ironical. That term irony, not the modernist sense, postmodernist sense. You need to react against it. So metamodernism actually though admitting that there are no final answers, no final truths, we do not have access to all this, yet kind of tries to make believe with some approach or some definition of meaning or some truth. No, so that is why it has a parallel both with modernism and postmodernism. And one final thought, there is a decline of theory in the United States. There is emphasis on theory is probably very minimal in the US today. So this is also one more thought that probably you can have in mind. So these are the writers. So I'm just jumping to postmodernism. Little later I'll come to modernism. So there's been some discussion on the literary circles or critical circles, like they have pronounced the death or demise of postmodernism. They say that era is over. So what comes after postmodernism? So that is where we are actually, in a sense, this term is only one, probably it's the best suggestion, but there are others like postmodernism, Popomo, it is called briefly, and other terms are also there. So what comes after postmodernism? So the people like this Canadian critic Linda Hutcheon or Ihab Hassan, they've all pronounced the death of postmodernism. So once you cannot have a vacuum. So what is the current condition, human condition known as? So that is where this term metamodernism comes. Okay. So modernism is over. You have postmodernism. After postmodernism, you have what is known as metamodernism. Again, of course, this term that I am suggesting, it doesn't mean that there are people who are not happy with it, or there are some critics who still say, no, 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 the era of postmodernism is not yet over. Like how when we had postmodernists, there were some who said the Enlightenment project is still on. So that is natural. You cannot have very clear cut jumps in the theoretical perspectives. So it doesn't matter. All you need to remember, of course, is the period of postmodernism. There are a good number of critics like all these Frederick Jameson, Habermas, who themselves are kind of associated with postmodernism. They themselves have, as it said here, singing the demise of post-structuralism. So it is safe to say that postmodernism, the period is over. We need something to substitute or take over. So that is metamodernism. So from the 1990s, so to speak, so there is a realization that postmodernism is no longer an adequate theory or an explanation for the dominant cultural sensibility. That is, the last 30 years, postmodernism is not a good way to explain the cultural sensibility of our age. So that is the reason why metamodernism has come to take the place. And of course, this is the reason, one of the reasons. So the intellectuals seem to have gone weary with the postmodernist emphasis of irony, detachment, and pastiche. So that is one of the reasons. So as you can see, Linda Hutcheon says, the postmodern movement has passed. So we have gone past it. And she is throwing a challenge. She says that I'm asking the readers, we need a name for this, what she calls as postmodernism. So postmodernism, postmodernism. The movement is over. We cannot have a series of posts to probably, that is one of the reasons. And contention of some theorists, literary theorists or cultural theorists, for example, Timotheus Vermeulen and Robin Acker. These are two people who have probably popularized metamodernism most, as you can see their names here. They have proposed the term metamodernism. So there's a very influential article they've written, which is called Notes on Metamodernism in 2010, where they have also talk about other terms. I have put a list, we'll see those terms, but the most popular probably is postmodernism. So the others are not really accepted to the extent that metamodernism has been accepted. So end of an era and the beginning of a new one. So very quickly, I don't need to talk about modernism, but just to give you a backdrop. So this is the moment of the early part of 20th century, of course, and in literature, we had a lot of experimentation. Avant-garde movements came only with modernist movements. So we had also techniques like stream of consciousness. So very popular technique that was used in modernism. So a lot of writers who are practicing high modernism, they used among several techniques, one is stream of consciousness. So modernism itself is a takeoff from romanticism. So no, from romanticism you had modernism, and essentially the highlight of modernism, of course, this is true even for postmodernism. So it's a period of experimentation in literature, especially even in arts, painting, sculpture, everywhere. So it's a period of experimentation. So what did the modernists experience? So they experienced alienation for the first time from the earlier moralistic standpoints, like the Victorian morality, because obviously the First World War with no, I think probably 60 million or something died in that war, or a bigger number. So that really created an impact about what human beings are capable of, what is ultimate meaning. So even God became little bit no, kind of a volatile no term. So that is how modernism came into being. Okay, so the precursors to modernism, of course, these are also, of course, Nietzsche especially is associated with both postmodernism, post-structuralism. A little earlier, Marx, Freud, James Fraser, of course. I think you remember Wasteland. There's a reference to the golden bow of James Fraser. So expressionism, surrealism, avant-garde. Then in sculpture and painting, you had cubism, futurism, etc. Dadaism. All these are technical experiments associated with modernism. This, of course, just a historical background. It's not our thing. Then some of the practitioners, no, of course, Faulkner comes in postmodernism also, including James Joyce. Very many of writers or thinkers, several times they switch over to the later movement. Okay, so like for example, Roland Barthes was both a structuralist as well as a post-structuralist. So D.H. Lawrence, all these people are there, Hemingway, and so on. So the focus in literature, modernist literature, is on the inner self and consciousness, Virginia Woolf, no, and others. So we also had this division between high modernism, low modernism, high art, low art. So all these monumental works in 1922, actually, Ulysses, Wasteland, Jacob's Room, and so on. So simply put, after World War One, the First World War, there was a sense of disillusionment and fragmentation. Probably this is the first time in human history when human beings did not automatically find meaning through something transcendental, because they have realized that, if I can use an old term, evil, a lot of evil in the world. No, that's not the way to look at theory, but still I've used it. So the sense of disillusionment, alienation, no, every fragmentation steps in at this period. The others from American perspective, Frost, Sandberg, Harlem Renaissance, so on, so forth. Okay. Then, of course, the same loss is also seen in American fiction. Fitzgerald, it's a wonderful novel, almost a novella, Great Gatsby, which captures the spirit of the age in a very wonderful way. I think T.S. Eliot called it a very, seminal novel. Okay, so other writers are also there. Hemingway is there, Villa Carter. So, okay, we are not going to just put down these terms. So from modernism, why did we have postmodernism? Because there was a reaction against modernism. The same term comes with metamodernism, reaction against postmodernism. So history is perhaps a series of reactions. No, we all want something novel, probably. It's not only a thirst for something novel, but I suppose conditions also change every generation, every 2 generations. So what works in a previous generation probably will not work. And after metamodernism, I don't know, probably another 20 years or so, or 10 years or so, probably some other ism will come. So postmodernism is a reaction to modernism, which means that there is a skepticism towards modernist beliefs. So we have seen that there was a disillusionment, sense of loss, alienation, but what the modernists believed was that science, kind of a substitute to religion and faith, science and technology, human progress, even enlightenment to some way, would step in and clear this lacunae, this this problem. But postmodernists find that science and technology probably are more harmful than useful, and so they did not have any phenomenon or any aspect to help them manipulate or kind of deal with reality, with the world. And that is why they were maintaining a very ironical stance to everything around. They were parodying everything. Literature also we find this, and there is no root. So we say in postmodernism, they deal with surfaces, they do not deal with the roots, because they have abandoned or they have denied the validity of anything that is having deeper meaning or access to meaning or reality. So that's why I brought in this philosophical thing. When you do a deeper study, it becomes much more clearer. So irony and self-awareness, these were the methods in postmodernist thought. Kurt Vonnegut, even Kurt Vonnegut, in fact, I saw one PhD thesis. They have studied him as a metamodernist. The initial part is seen as postmodernist, later part as a metamodernist. Okay, some of these writers are there. So postmodernism after the Second World War, and of course they also overthrew the difference between high art and low art. So mass culture became very much part of the discourse, critical discourse. Some of the texts that French Lieutenant's Woman, If on a Winter's Night, etc. These are some texts. Some of the writers also in postmodernism, these are the writers who are there. And of course literature of the absurd. So postmodern philosophy talks about abyss, void, nothingness, which are similar terms actually even in modernism, but they try to substitute it, okay, through a belief in science, so to speak. But here they only looked at the elusiveness of meaning, knowledge. You cannot access meaning. You cannot access. See, like I said, it's like dealing with vacuum. I'm not able to find a better image than that, which is, I think, quite difficult to access. Okay, so these are the uh, broader philosophical backgrounds for postmodernism. So we have seen skepticism. One more important dimension, relativism. So what happens to ethics and values? So in metamodernism, there is a revival of ethical position, of values, of belief also. Though they are aware of the problems and complications in trying to promote a set of ethics or values, by that I mean trying to prove that that ethical standpoint is valid or even true. They metamodernists do not claim that it is true. They realize also that you cannot have a kind of an absolutist no ethical point of view or a value system or a belief system. They also say that, but instead of no dealing with nothingness, so to speak, instead of dealing with the emptiness or void, so to speak, they assume a ethical or a value system. So that is the biggest difference between metamodernism and that's why it also harks back to modernist position. Okay, when we come to metamodernism, I guess it'll become much clearer. So a suspicion of reason, which is what the modernists had. So you can contrast the previous movements and see how the current movement varies. So postmodernists deny enlightenment. They say there is no such thing as truth, so nothing called truth. So I think this for me personally, I think Professor Nazim mentioned theology and all that. Again, they're big words, but I have been all through very interested in a study of religion. So it's very difficult for me to no accept a statement like this. There's no truth or no access to truth, though yes, because of the indeterminacy of language and other reasons, it seems that this is also true. Okay, the only truth that you have is that there is no truth probably. So they realize, postmodernists, that language is not a mirror of nature. So you remember the mimetic theory and all. So it reflects reality. Art reflects reality. Art, of course, no, in our what you call field, it is dealing with language. So we are not dealing with painting or music or some other art. We are dealing with language. So language is not a mirror of nature. Language does not reflect reality. Then what does it reflect? So that is the moot point here in postmodernism. Then therefore they reject foundational theories, philosophical foundationalism. For example, rationalism of Descartes. I think therefore I am. Cogito ergo sum. They dismiss enlightenment and other totalizing systems of thought, or very famous statement of Lyotard, incredulity towards meta narratives. There are no longer any meta narratives, only local narratives. So that's what postmodernism talks about. And again, it's a repetition of the same point: skepticism, relativism, but he is clarifying what type: metaphysical relativism, epistemological relativism, ethical relativism. These are only possibilities. You cannot have absolute relativism. And so the aspects of reality that are objective, not subjective, the reality that is objective, we cannot have any access. So it does not claim that there are, postmodernism does not claim that, in fact, it denies, that's a better way to phrase it. It denies there are objective, absolute, moral values. So this is very interesting because ethics is making a comeback in metamodernism. I think I saw a book today published by Cambridge. I think it's titled Nostalgia and Ethics in Contemporary, I think, American Fiction. I have not had a chance to look inside. So it's taken up some texts that have come out recently, and it's examining both nostalgia as well as ethics. So that, I guess, must be a meta-modernist approach. Okay, so very loosely, no time to get into the nitty-gritties of post-structuralism, postmodernism, and all that. But yes, indeterminacy, there's a problem. Language is not determinate. Okay, it's indeterminate. Then there are problems of ideology and constructions of power. And so this is a problem for postmodernists and post-structuralists. So in literature, various writers, Don DeLillo, Salman Rushdie, Samuel Beckett, etc., skepticism about art or the ability of art to create meaning. So this is a very powerful statement. So far okay, we can theorize anything, but I don't know if continuously theorizing about something without having any meaning makes it anybody's, what are we dealing with then? Are we dealing with something insubstantial, ethereal, or something like that? So we have to, probably the disconnect between within quotes literary works and popular works is precisely because of these struggles with the higher realizations, which the common or the popular people, writers, don't seem to. For example, a Chetan Bhagat sells enormously compared to probably Amitav Ghosh or even Arundhati Roy, because Arundhati Roy and Amitav Ghosh are aware of these dimensions or complications, and Chetan Bhagat is probably very down to earth, rooted in within quotes reality, and so many more understand him. But this is a very difficult thought. If you are skeptical about the ability of art to create meaning, then what is it that we are doing there? If you look at the way in which art is created, the creative process alone, without worrying about what it entails, it's difficult. So terms like intertextuality, metafiction, magic realism, they are all terms in postmodernism, or techniques in postmodernism. And of course, the role of reason, they challenge the role of reason in understanding of the human condition. That is very important term. This distinction, high and popular culture, and some repetitions are the black humor, of course, it's also part of postmodern approach. Entropy, paranoia, pastiche, of course, all these are metafiction as postmodernist technique. So they deal with the surface of things without going into the depths of significance. So that's a very key term in postmodern. So very rough chart uh, categorizing what is modernism. I think I'm clean running out of time. Okay. So what after postmodern? We have seen that in the beginning of this discussion. What after postmodern? So now that we are, I've just jumped. No, I have not given you the there's a kind of missing link, so to speak. So we have to assume that postmodernism is kind of over. So what is it that comes after? So what could possibly follow? So, like how after romanticism we had modernism, from modernism we had postmodernism. Is it postmodernism after postmodernism? So this is a very important term, postmodernism. Then pseudo modernism, post-humanism, slightly different even that, or else perhaps metamodernism. And there are other terms also by several other writers, like hypermodernism. These are all after postmodernism, after postmodern. Digimodernism, Alan Kirby, talks about digimodernism, or this very famous term postmodernism, cosmodernism. So these are certain terms that are used. Altermodernism, then new sincerity, which seems to have found some meaning, that there's a kind of affect, the affect theory that is also kind of popular nowadays. Emotions and feelings, the sincerity, not irony, but sincerity or authenticity. Even David Foster Wallace has promoted this. So new sincerity is or new modernism. These are all the different terms that have been proposed after postmodernism. So you can do a study on that also. So it seems very clear that there is a need for something beyond postmodernism, something beyond postmodern framework, which some people still prefer this term postmodernism. I'm not denying it. They still prefer, apart from the kind of difficulty of pronouncing it or saying pomo or something like that. That way also metamodernism is probably a better title. So since postmodernism is no longer useful in interpretation of literary works, we urgently need, this is by a person called Simon Radchenko, very clearly spelled out by him. We need a new understanding framework, toolkit, based on what you can call as postmodern approaches. As I referred earlier, Hutchin says that we need a better term for this. So tentatively, she also calls it postmodern, but we need a better term. So this particular theorists say, from this standpoint, the most promising postmodern concept is metamodernism. So there is a big assumption here. The assumption is no longer are we in a postmodern world. We have gone beyond it. Last 20 years, perhaps even 30 years. Okay. And second, because we have gone beyond the postmodern condition, we need a new term to kind of reflect this new human condition. And that term, you can call it postmodern. That's used synonymously with metamodernism. In some cases, it's more popular than metamodernism. I have to admit that. Okay. But some critics seem to prefer the term metamodernism. Okay. So this is the reason why we have this term or this condition or this phenomenon or this school of thought called metamodernism. Okay, so the very quickly the timeline. So after the First World War, we have modernism. After the Second World War, postmodernism. After 1991, the Gulf War is the time frame of metamodernism. So you can see probably roughly each generation 30-40 years, each movement, so to speak, each condition. So these are some of the main texts that are central for metamodernism. And this is not directly connected with metamodernism. Post-truth is something else, but I found this very captivating. So I just put this here. So the earlier position, I think, therefore I am Descartesian metaphysics. And today we are living in a post-truth world where you say, I believe, therefore I am right. So this is the post-truth condition. Okay. So humanism, what are the, you can even call this an emphasis. I talked about it in literature. Probably even here you should call it as an emphasis. What is the emphasis of humanism? Older approach, God is the center. And romanticism, nature is center. Modernism, even though we have some questioning of the ultimate meaning of reality and all that, they thought that creation of meaning through science or belief in science becomes the focal point. But postmodernism, of course, taking after the post-structuralist Derridian statement, center is no longer the center, and decentering becomes the, paradoxically, that becomes the center. So deconstruction itself becomes another center. But metamodernism says they accept, yes, you can no longer believe that there is a center, but you need to assume a center. We cannot go on with this kind of nihilistic approach with life. So that is what they contain. So you cannot go on. In fact, I can probably quote T.S. Eliot, who says that human beings cannot accept too much reality. So we cannot go in a very negative manner through life. So the postmodernist thought, which was very popular for 20, 30 years, even in literature, has given way to a newer hope, but which coexists with doubt. That's one way of phrasing what is metamodernism. You have hope, you have belief, but you are aware of doubt. The earlier periods, humanism, for example, even romantic, there was no doubt. They had full belief. Only in modernism and postmodernism, you had that problem. But metamodernism is able to juggle simultaneously both these positions, the position of nothingness as well as something solid. So that's why it's an oscillation between modernism and postmodernism, like a pendulum which swings from one end to the other. It keeps perpetually swinging from modernist thought to postmodernist thought. And in literature, when this reflection is seen, you have both these elements present. You call such literature as meta-modernist. Okay, so I think I'll take time, probably another 10 odd minutes, and because 7:30. Okay.
You can continue, sir.
Thank you. Fine. So liberal humanism, that position, they emphasized on originality of text. Romanticism, these are terms. See, whenever such very clear cut, you should always be suspicious, because nothing is so clear in contemporary world. So this is just for the sake of clarity and understanding. So confessional texts, okay, modernism, experimental texts, and then parody, which is a very big element in postmodernism, intertextuality, and so on. And here you have the emphasis on oscillation, retelling, and remix. So in music, you have this remixes, where the original is there, and then you have something. So is it is it a plagiarized work or is it original? It is both. That is where exactly metamodernism stands. Whereas postmodernism is only a reference, intertextual references, whereas this is an entire retelling itself. I just found this, I think a couple of days in the Hindu. I thought this is, one of you can probably write a paper and publish it, get it published. It's written by a person, American, called Sandra Newman, and it's a retelling of 1984 of Orwell through the character Julia. There's a character called Julia. Vincent Smith is there. He has a relationship with this lady. So it's a retelling of the same classic cult novel 1984 through the perspective of Julia. So I have kind of suggested you a topic for an article or so. Okay, so the history of metamodernism, going from romanticism to, we have been seeing this, so there's no need for me to repeat this. So metamodernism stands on the shoulders of these two giants. So it is not an no denial of postmodernist thought. So do not think that metamodernism dumps postmodernism, or probably even, because there is a kind of a leaning towards modernism. There's no doubt about it. If you ask which one is more favored by metamodernists, it should be modernists only. But still, it is not that they have been able to, let's say, answer intellectually or philosophically to the central questions raised by postmodernist thought. So skepticism to belief, skepticism towards truth, relativism, because you cannot have absolute ideas, are also accepted by metamodernists. But their only contention is you cannot forever be a cynic. In putting it another way, if this is a very nihilistic or a negative or a pessimistic philosophy, postmodernism, metamodernism is more optimistic, believes in hope, believes in looking forward or looking up to things. So that is the biggest difference between these two movements. So irony is now coupled with sincerity, new sincerity I referred to, no? So subjectivity with objectivity. So you do have not merely subjectivity, but also objectivity. And optimism is also goes hand in hand with doubt. So that is the no what you call, these are some of the backdrops. So it's a set of developments. So it's an extremely complex area. So to segregate no only that which is applicable to literature, which is what I tried to do, is almost impossible. There's so many references to other no mass cultural phenomenon, no music, film. In fact, to be honest, several of these references I'm not familiar with. Okay, so it's a composite no movement, or a composite term that tries to explain all the cultural manifestations of a period, and in many ways similar to the term postmodernism. So it's a mediation between both modernism and postmodernism, and there's this famous beyond with between. We'll come to that in a moment. So what is it, what is this postmodernism? So there are a lot of details here. It will definitely be no, it will not clarify, it will only obfuscate. I'll only highlight those very important elements. So the material is available. I'll forward it to Dr. Sadiqul Amin. So it is a reaction to postmodernism, and it rejects postmodern skepticism. So some important components, and their main tenets are faith, trust, sincerity, which are not present in postmodernism. Okay, and you do have other terms like neo-modernism, which we have already seen. Okay, so these 2 points, it's a reaction to postmodernism, and it rejects the postmodern skepticism. Okay, so this term meta has many meanings. Meta, as in metaphysics, for example, means beyond, etc. But it's taken from Plato's ideas of metaxy. So this actually means holding 2 positions at the same time, something like an ambivalent position. So it denotes a movement between opposite poles as well as beyond them. So that's why beyond with between, it's actually spatial. So beyond is to go away from, with is exact coincidence with something, between is somewhere not between, not exact coincidence, neither is it going away, it is somewhere in between. So just think 2 points, A and B. One is modernism, one is postmodernism. So it is simultaneously all these three. That is the beauty of metamodernism. So there's a reference to Interstellar, where I think there are 3 or 4 dimensions that are spoken of in the film. No, all are shown at the same time. So metamodernism propagates that you can have a condition that talks about something beyond postmodernism, which means modernism and postmodernism in quotation marks. It is something that goes with modernism and postmodernism, because it takes some aspects of both modernism and postmodernism, and it also oscillates somewhere a space in between these 2 extremes of modernism and postmodernism. Okay, so it denotes a movement between as well as beyond. It also means with. Okay, if you find this little bit tedious, beyond and between. Okay, so that is what you mean by postmodernism. So it is a constant state of flux between modernist, postmodern. So what are these ideas? Between hopelessness, postmodernism; hope, modernism; between knowingness, modernism, they believed in science; and naivete, that is postmodernism; between deconstruction and reconstruction, and it is a state of meaninglessness, but which has some hope. Just think about Waiting for Godot. The pure state of hopelessness. They do not even know something. Okay, they have very vague hope that Godot will come and they'll be saved. If Godot comes, then we are saved. I think that's the exact statement there. But the hopelessness probably overwhelms or is more foregrounded than the part of salvation. But here they do emphasize, yes, it is a meaningless world, probably, ultimately, but we can still be saved. Paradoxically or strangely or controversially, they give climate change. According to metamodernists, climate change can also be something good, in the sense that it's a cleansing kind of a thing. No, the extremities of weather perhaps cleanse the reasons for this extremity in weather, that is humans, and you will have something like a post-apocalyptic literature that we have. You can have a new world, so to speak, after this kind of apocalyptic scenario that comes due to climate change. So this is a kind of thought process that goes in meta-modernism. So it should not be understood as merely completely you go back to realism or modernism, but there is a kind of a rehash of all these earlier movements or conditions. So these are the chronology. So we do not have time for all this. So Linda Hutchian calls for a new term. Okay. Then there are some other writers. This is important. 2010, the cultural, they are actually Dutch from the Netherlands. So Vermeulen and Acker, they started using this term, metamodernism, especially notes on metamodernism. Then one more, the Meta-Modernist Manifesto, a year later by Luke Turner, even that is important. Then one more important text is the article no, by the scholars, David James and Urmila Seshagiri. This is a kind of a chronology of that you have. One more important, no, so whenever you have like cultural studies, the Birmingham Center we had to promote. So in metamodernism, there is a AHRC Center, no, the UK Arts and Humanities Research Council that is funding this metamodernism research project. So you can find that online. I think I have given the website address somewhere. You can check that. And there are some philosophers like Josephson, American Josephson Storm, actually. He published one book, Future of Theory, Metamodernism. Okay, that's also a very influential work. So again, it's the same repetition of what I've been saying. So I cannot actually dwell because of lack of time and space probably. But these are the findings, so to speak, of metamodernism. So when you read the materials, the reason for these observations or manifestos or tenets will become clearer. So this is the width, between and beyond, no, those terms is actually taken by Acker and Timotheus Vermeulen. So situated epistemologically with post brackets modernism, means both ontologically and historically. So very famous, this quotation that I'm giving, they're central quotes by these authors to kind of define for us and give us the framework of metamodernism. Then it proposes to fill the postmodernist void. So you have a New Zealand writer, Forrester, who says that it's okay to search for values and meaning, even as we, but it is not okay to search according to postmodernism. So that is one more quotation. And of course, there is a renewed sense of empathy. I tried to pick quotes which will give us the various important components of, that's why varied quotes I've taken. Empathy is one more, where it is a totally alien. This concept of empathy is totally alien. You only have irony. So you totally alien to postmodernism. Okay. So this is one more quality of metamodernism. Then contemporary fictions, they have a conscious relationship with modern. In fact, one place, 2015, there was, I don't know if I mentioned that. Yeah, there's a group of scholars who came from different countries no, I think this is in Netherlands. So they wanted to observe the resurfacing of modernism in contemporary literature. So this is a very important dimension, the rebirth or surfacing of modernism is a very important component in metamodernism. So they have examined several authors, including Zadie Smith, Ian McEwan, and they found that there are modernist elements. So they were puzzled. Why is modernism making is it a comeback? No. Are we going back, a return to modernism? Then they clarify it. No, it is not exactly that. But there is a return in contemporary fiction, a focus, a renewed attention on the kind of methodology or the techniques adopted, or even the philosophy of modernist literature. And so David James and Sheshagiri, Urmila Sheshagiri, these are also a very important text, Metamodernism, Narratives of Continuity and Revolution. They are calling it little charted 21st century aesthetic called metamodernism. So this is the antecedent. So one more very nice statement by Linda Cirillo. So what Linda Cirillo says is, that metamodernism claims or reclaims ownership of human vicissitudes experientially felt to be real. I think it's a very, very, very important statement. Probably just a couple of minutes or maximum 5 minutes, Farhad sir. Okay. So this reality, see, we find there is a disjoint between the real world, so to speak, and the theoretical world of literature and these critical theorists or philosophers, so to speak. So when you keep reading them, when you look at their jargon, when you look at their statements, I think the more you are alienated from the real world. The common person is not. So what is it? We can't have both these positions being correct. And if what this so-called nihilistic approaches are right, then we can't assume that people are fools. So this real world experience by ordinary people is what metamodernism allows us to reconnect with. Probably this is a hopeful sign for literature itself. Okay, so first coin as Vermeulen and Acker, 2010 they admit that 30 odd years back, this is not a new term, metamodernism. Probably it was first used by Xaver Zede. So in 1975, these are the they are from the Department of Cultural Studies, Vermeulen from the Netherlands, and Acker from Department of Philosophy. So cultural theorists from, once again, Netherlands. And other important. So these two texts already I mentioned, they're very important. So what is, so it's a cultural philosophy. What do you mean by cultural philosophy? It is a system for understanding the world. That's why I said realism. Unfortunately, definitely I do not have time to look at realism, but just any ism is finally, I think, has to discuss the world. Even if you don't believe there's a reality beyond the world, you have to. So it's a system of logic. This is second important component. Not only world, it also helps us to navigate the digital age, cyber age, which is missing in postmodernism and the other isms. And it helps us to understand our emotional reaction. Very, very famous. This actually comes, no, even in postmodernist thought, others have you. I think Raymond Williams, for example, has used this term structure of feeling. But in metamodernism, feeling, reactions, empathy, these are very important no states. So there are a lot of studies relating affect theory with metamodernism. Affect theory is one more no slightly similar but a little different also theory. Okay, so feeling, reactions, and this has come because there's one demise of postmodernism, second a resurfacing, but it is not lock stock barrel going back to postmodernism, sorry, modernism, or just dumping postmodernism again lock stock barrel. Both are not true. Okay, so this is an oscillation between a modern commitment and detachment. No, this is a statement, very famous statement taken from notes of notes on metamodernism. Actually, I have defined actually what is meant by enthusiasm and irony, and it is also useful to helping us understand the internet, the digital age. And there's a film that's discussed here, and one of the no, I think Andre Gregory. I have no idea about this movie, but that person says that the quest for transcendence is okay. It's important. Even if there is, in fact, no transcendence to be found, you assume reality, you assume meaning. Do not deny meaning. Do not say that there is no meaning, because we cannot live in that kind of hope. Okay. So, okay, the first works, very important work, Infinite Jest. No, we can call it postmodern. There's a romantic sensibility. I'm just rushing through. The fragmented postmodern self becomes a whole in metamodernism. So self that is fragmented. So putting it very simply, the modernist, they realize that self is fragmented, but they try to stick these fragments together. Postmodernists said it's fragmented, we can't do anything about it. But in metamodernism, again, the self, there's a reconstruction of the fragmented self, so it becomes whole. And these are similar statements that we have. So metamodernism describes reality more authentically. Of course, you can dispute this. Anything can be contested in today's world. So you can contest this. So it believes in reconstruction, things that are being deconstructed. Deconstruction, there is a kind of attempt for reconstruction with the view of re-establishing hope and optimism. So there is a kind of a remix that is taking place. And we want an emphasis on allowing things to be wholes, not HOLE, but WHOLE. Okay, so that is what postmodernism. So it takes the wreckage of meaning. Yes, there is a wreckage of meaning, but it tries to bring out something hopeful from this wreckage, and this becomes a new meta narrative. Okay, so that is one more aspect of this agenda. These are repetition which comes in earlier parts. So, and also the language metamon. I think I guess if you are honest, we must have really been frustrated with the jargon and tone and language of the theorists, postmodernists, with all the references, intertextual. No, we want simple language. Okay, so we don't want to be sarcastic postmodern loners. We want to belong. We want to have a structure. We want to have a system. So that is a very socially a useful project, the metamodern project. So ultimately, it is a constructive nature, the constructive nature, and some key terms or strategies, consciousness, reality, they are all making a no kind of a no entry, so to speak. No, in then there are other strategies. I'll just leave this. See, even flash mobs. I think some of you are aware of this mass cultural movement, flash mobs. They are also considered as metamodern. There have been some articles discussing that. So American Book Review dedicated no issue to metamodernism, had series of essays where all these authors are shown to be, including Murakami and Zadie Smith and Foster Wallace, Boleno, and all these writers. There are also other writers who can be studied as metamodernists. So some of you want to take this up for research, MPhil or PhD. Probably there's a lot of field for you open no, to examine. Probably you can even study, do a cultural study method, so to speak, compare some films with literary works and so on and so forth. So these are all names and terms. So two theories of metamodernism. One, it's a lens. Then second is a structure of feeling. Science fiction is also a very important field in. So Kurt Vonnegut, I mentioned, no, so he can be considered as a metamodernist. Then other sub branches of fiction like slipstream fiction, fan fiction. So this is the one that I referred to, feminist retelling of no, Julia 1984. It's come this reviews there from the Hindu, probably 3-4 days back. Okay, digital culture, internet is very important. We have been talking only philosophical background, but metamodernism also deals with digital culture and the internet. So that is one more. And there's something called reboot or remake or remix. All these are there in film. Like I said, honestly, I'm not familiar with a lot of these references, but Interstellar I watched and I didn't understand. But now probably through the lens of metamodernism, it will make much sense. Then popular culture, Huffington Post, a lot of essays come, country music, so on and so forth. Then memes is another metamodernist technique. So I've just put some memes. This is when the Suez Canal, that ship blocked it. So there they said, my to-do list is so huge, like the ship blocking, and my progress is small crane. But this is great. So the online classroom sessions, there's a meme here where the world is like Titanic sinking with all the corona and making a huge impact on all our lives. And teachers are like the group of musicians in Titanic. They were no kind of like Nero playing the fiddle, so to speak. So this is a meme. So what the meme is, it takes an original idea and applies it to something contemporary. That is the philosophy behind a meme. So conflicting realities realities can be simultaneously experienced. Okay, that is the word. Then some key terms are there. So whereas postmodernism calls reality into question, pseudo-modernism, or you can call it metamodernism, defines that reality. So there is some differences and all that. So what is realism and all, and bibliography with modernism, postmodernism, and some metamodernism. A lot of texts. I have not included everything. I thought the more important ones I have included here. I think it is kind of chronological only. I'm not sure. So this is that AHRC website address, UK Arts and Science. You get a lot of material. I think audio, talks are there available for us to listen to.